these sponsors. Thank you for hearing me out. I just wanted to say that because we care deeply about this valley, we care deeply about this river. This presentation is intended to share the project idea with the community and to gather feedback that will help guide the direction of the project. We expect to engage the audience tonight. We've got a lot of folks online at home. So at the end, when we do have questions and comments period, we have a mic that I'm wearing so that folks at home can hear. We're going to pass that around. Joshua's going to run around as fast as he can. So please hold your comment so that everyone can hear them. Okay. Finally, I will introduce our guest. Thank you. Maybe you guys should be so.
Hello, everybody. We have opportunities to share the project and building place. Share greatly as an adult. So
Yeah.
we have a lot to cover tonight. This has been a process, and you know we're a little bit on time, so I'm going to try to quickly through it, and then we'll have some questions afterwards. So I will. My name is Erin, McKay. I work at Chelan County Natural Resource Department. I've been working with the county for about 7 years now, doing a variety of restoration projects, audit, water, content improvement, projects in the Wenatchee Basin, as well as quite a bit of forest health, community forest management, and blending of recreation and restoration to protect the ecosystem, as well also providing recreational opportunities for the community. I live in Leavenworth. I've been here for almost 15 years. I'm grateful every day for the beauty that surrounds us and for the recreation.
I'm Lacy, and I'm an engineer with Recreation Engineering and Planning. We led the conceptual design alternatives for this project.
I'm Randy Goetz. I'm a river restoration scientist with Parr Consultants, with the county on the habitat side. I think that's just for the zoo students, actually.
We'll do it.
Feel free to shout louder. My voice doesn't get a little bit much higher. So, all right, well, let's get into it. So I know a lot of you have been part of this process from the beginning. Others are just now hearing about it and probably wondering what the heck are we talking about? Why I was talking about a project at Barn Beach.
Sorry, just.
Okay. Yes, it might be awkward. So I'm going to go through the process quickly from start to finish, and I just want to assure everybody here this is not a Disneyland type of proposal. There's enough of that here already. This is more of an opportunity to just talk through the thought process and the potential and so I'm going to go back to 2017 when the county created the Chelan County Comprehensive Plan. And as part of that plan, the Natural Resource Department took on the Park and Rec element. We did a significant community outreach effort for that. We gathered a lot of input from the community, but it's just what people were interested in seeing, what direction they wanted to see recreation taking in the county. There was a really large feedback response from the Whitewater boating or the Whitewater community it ended up emerging as one of the most engaged and the most comments that were received on this topic. And this was an interest from the Whitewater Recreation Community feasibility study for Whitewater Park in our area. This is something that hundreds of other communities across the west and across the US have a lot of success and a lot of benefits brought by these whitewater parks. There was also a trend of site, so that was all taken under consideration. Just the whitewater plan is a high priority tier 1 project, and that then unlocks the funding to do this as a high priority project. So the option to feasibility. The feasibility study was rather than solely focusing on Dryden Dam, we wanted to take a comprehensive look at the whole area. Is there plans to have that improvement? And is there we're collected and evaluated in that line. So this report was completed in the fall of 2021. That we did establish the process for a group of forms of comments and improve what is in the concept. Connect River Alliance. A lot of that was through the alliance. We had a network of also included agencies from specific the Dryden Dam did but then also was a little more human. At that point, we had Rowdy, we talked about the study. To get bill. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit of what the responses were through that first, completion of that first report. So we did get formal letters from the Yakima Nation Fisheries, from LandPD, from the WGSW, all of which we had been working with throughout the process on. The gist of the letters from Yakima Nation and Chelan were we operate a broodstock collection facility at the Dryden Dam, which is essentially their dam, which is an attracting fish, and then the fish go fish ladder, and they collect and collect the broodstock for their habitat mitigation program, which they are mandated to keep stocks of fish species that are important to the Yakima or the tribes, and also listed. So they were not interested in basically relocating the entire facility there in the name of recreation. That was not a good enough reason for them to consider redoing that whole area. So that's sort of where our conversation had to end with them. There were a couple other concerns listed by the Yakima Nations in terms of just impacts on migratory fish species when you do anything in the river. Also concerns over increased recreation when there's already a lot of recreation happening in this river. Concerns of increasing that recreation. And then we did take it one step farther with the PUD in talking about considering dam safety retrofit for the Dryden Dam. And so we kind of left behind the Whitewater Park idea and said, well, hey, what about this at least? Because there's a lot of community concern about the safety factor at the Dryden Dam. They said, thanks, but no thanks. Well, they said, thanks, but we'll handle that internally. So they do plan to have their engineers assess options for dam safety retrofits. And that's in the ball's in their court in that regard. So that is also where our conversation with the PUD had to end. So, so that was, and we did sit down and have meetings with PUD and Yakima Nation, and we, took this as far as we could. It's kind of now in the hands of the community in terms of the dam safety portion to follow up and see that the PUD is indeed addressing as well as they can any hazard there. So there was also in the public comment period, there was a petition that was submitted to us during that comment period, over 500 signatures from the public over concern of the dam safety. So that's documented in our public comments. And then there are a handful of other things that came out of just kind of general community members. Other than the safety concerns, there were a couple other sites that were proposed that weren't in our list of sites, and they were great ideas, but they were in areas that were not previously degraded or had areas that wouldn't have habitat benefits associated with constructing anything in the river. So from our standpoint, that's a non-starter. And then also concerns over access and parking in Leavenworth, seeing that was the second priority site. There were comments to the effect of, well, even if there were something there, I couldn't get there because it's too busy and there's limited parking. And so what's the point? So with all of these things in mind, this feedback shaped our approach moving forward, and keeping all these things in mind as we move forward. We look to this site, and at this point, the project shifted from really looking at like Whitewater Park, full recreation based project to, well, let's look at this site more in
through the lens of what are ways we can improve the site in various ways, what are the restoration opportunities here, and then also what could some recreation opportunities be as well, but to really kind of take a broader look at the area. And so that's what this next phase was, basically doing an alternatives analysis for this site and taking a deeper dive and looking more at what actually exists here and what the potential here could be. So here we are. So yeah, now let's dive into this site a little bit more. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the site. That's why you're here tonight. We're literally 200 yards from the spot right now. But going back in time to 1904, when the Lamb-Davis Mill was opened up and the dam was built to create an impoundment, a mill pond to catch the logs or to float the logs that were coming down from the upper Wenatchee. This is a photo from those early 1900s days. You can see that the dam was channel spanning, created a significant impoundment that reached all the way, it went almost a mile up Icicle River from here, and much of Blackbird Island and Enchantment Park as we know it was underwater. So this whole area was underwater. You can see the pilings that were all along the banks, basically to trap wood. A lot of those pilings are still here in the river. They're a part of history for sure, but they're also, and this kind of may tie in at some point, but they also do create a safety hazard in the river, especially the ones that are mid-channel. And when you have people floating down, it's, you know, with a current, it could be a bad situation. So I would like to make the suggestion at some point that the consideration of removing some of those piles that are in the middle of the river maybe be tied to this project or some other project, but they're still out there. And there were some piles at the East Leavenworth boat ramp that were removed 2 years ago. Also a significant safety hazard right there at the takeout. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. Back to today. So much of the dam infrastructure is still there in the river. This is a photo taken at, and I just wanted to say too, when the mill closed in 1926 and they were done with the dam removal consisted of dynamiting out one corner of the dam and allowing the river to go on that side and essentially end run around the portion of the dam that was left in place. And that's all that was done. So now this is at a photo taken at low flows. You can still see a lot of the infrastructure is in place. And this, there's timber cribbing, there's creosote treated wood, there's rebar, there's concrete. There's a lot of relic dam material left in the river in this site. This is another photo. This is standing about mid-channel, and the structure extends about 2/3 of the way out into the river right now. Note the pieces of rebar sticking out vertically here, and also there's still some pilings sticking up vertically, and that's right in the middle of the river where people are floating down. So this is the Barn Beach that we all know and love. You can definitely find me down there in the summer with my daughter and enjoying the river and the pool. So this is looking upstream at the structure, and you can see how far it extends. It also extends out into the floodplain this direction, which you can't see as much now because there's a lot of vegetation covering it, but there is basically a barrier built into the floodplain still. Pan downriver a little bit. This is standing in the same spot, just looking downriver. You can see that there's a lot of material just below where it was blasted out. And that's basically just moved downstream a little bit. And there's a significant riffle just below the pool that's at Barn Beach. This is at low flows. This is late August, early September, and it's still pretty fast moving right below the pool there. As I was standing here taking some pictures, I watched a young teenager lose their footing and bump all the way down that riffle and end up on the other side of the river over here. And that's like late summer, that's not even high flow. So it's still an active, hydraulically active area. And a lot of it is, well, it's still, seeing the impacts of basically the dam removal that was done. So this is an aerial view of the site. So here, there's the dam structure. There's a low spot right there. And then here's kind of the end of it where those photos were taken with the infrastructure still in place. Here's the material that kind of came from here and is now here. And then here's where that riffle is. And this is the beach where the tubers who exit on that side of the river get out. And there's kind of a pathway that goes from there to the parking area, Barn Beach. I wanted to point out that this is a significant grade change in the river. The character downstream from here is much different than the character upstream. These are topographic lines. They get a lot closer. You can tell that the river gets steeper there, it gets narrower, rockier. There's big rapids around the corner. Upstream from here, it's a lot flatter and slower moving. And that is why people tube there and then take out here. That also will come into play when we talk more about salmon migration and salmon spawning. So just wanted to give everybody that look. So why do anything here? There are several reasons that we think this is a compelling project site, not only for recreation, but I'm going to just kind of go through and touch on some of the different facets that come into play here. There's the rehabilitation, which I already talked about, basically just removal of the relic dam material that doesn't need to be in the river anymore. Habitat improvement potential, river recreation management strategy or efforts that are already underway, river safety, shoulder season recreation opportunity, and I'll get into that a little bit more. There's obviously already a lot of river recreation happening in this area, but it's limited to a specific flow window. Learning opportunities for people getting into river recreation, and then the potential to actually enhance the Barn Beach pool. So I'll just go through a couple slides while I talk about these things. Already talked about this stuff. With any rehabilitation of the dam, it wouldn't be like a removal of the dam system. It's controlling hydraulics in that area, and it would there's not an interest to remove that whole structure. Basically, just to remove the trash that's left there. Habitat improvement potential. This picture on your left, right? Anyway, this one. If anybody has walked through the park from the parking lot to Barn Beach in May and June, you might notice that the path is underwater. That's because there's a significant low spot in the floodplain right there, just above the dam structure. Those types of low spots that get seasonally inundated can have a lot of habitat potential and are very necessary for fish species in different life cycles. So there's it's interesting to look at the habitat potential of that low spot and potential off-channel habitat. The Leavenworth River Recreation Management Strategy. So for a couple years now, the city and the Chamber of Commerce and agencies and local folks have been working together to, I see some people from the city here, have been working to address some of the issues from the rapidly increasing numbers of people recreating, tubing, using the river in Leavenworth. There's not a lot of structure in place around that use yet, but there are issues that have been identified and concerns with it. So a couple years ago, there was a study done to look at what are the uses. What are some of the issues that are occurring that people are concerned about? There was a big community survey with a great response rate, almost 800 responses, I think, from the survey. And then there are some management recommendations that came out of that. So since then, the city and stakeholders are continuing to work on a strategy. This project site is right within that river corridor, and it's one of the major exit points. I would say it's probably the major exit point for a lot of the tubing that happens. So it's something that should be looked at within the context of overall river recreation management anyway. So this is a good time to be looking at this type of project and what are the possibilities here in that context. And the city will be continuing to work on that strategy. Safety is a big one. Last year was a bad year, and there were 6 fatalities in the Wenatchee River. Part of it was high flows late into the season, hot, people recreating. 3 of those were below our area here. Tubers missing the takeout, basically. So there's been sort of a task force convened as part of that river recreation strategy group that involves the city, the sheriff's office, the river rescue, the Cascade Medical. How can we get the word out a little bit better? How can we do better messaging outreach to hope to try to prevent some of these accidents? I mean, those were the fatalities. There were numerous calls every day for, that didn't result, luckily, in fatalities. But anyway, it's a big issue. And this being kind of the last takeout spot before that grade change and the rapids, what can we do at this site to improve safety? Whether it's signage, there's in that task force, there's been talk of having better signage at that takeout. Maybe there could even be signage that could be installed in the middle, closer to the center of the river that people can see. Would there be any other ways to help encourage people to be able to get out right there? And then shoulder season recreation. So the Wenatchee River play run is hugely popular. It's people come from all over the state. It's a great run. There are a couple standing waves that exist that are park and play. Basically, you can park and access the wave. This is a photo of Rodeo Wave by Dryden. There's also Happy Wave near Shaston, which is accessed through private property. This one is accessed through a WDFW parking area. So they're great, and that's why there's so many people who are so excited about river recreation here. But it's very seasonal, and those waves and kind of the popularity of the river recreation is flow based here. And this is a hydrograph of the Wenatchee River at Shaston showing the average CFS, cubic feet per second. And just to give an example, Rodeo Wave is an attractive surfable feature at 7,000 CFS or higher. So you have kind of like this period for Rodeo Wave. Happy Wave is in a little bit lower, between 5,000 and 7,000. So it has a different type of season, but also a pretty short season because it's only in between 5,000 and 7,000. So what I'm getting at is they're seasonally limited features, and they're also in when the flows are high, and can be intimidating to people who aren't like river experts. Basically, there's the Rodeo Wave has a railroad trestle just downstream and some other hazards, and it's not really a place to go if you're trying to get into Whitewater. So I also want to point out that during low flows down here, this kind of overlaps with our peak tourist season. So you know, if you did have something that were a little bit more accessible for more of the flows, but not necessarily at those low flows, you could make the argument that there wouldn't be too much user conflict or too much or much more increased use at any one time, because the uses really wouldn't overlap entirely with each other. So that's just a point to say that, you know, there could be opportunity for people, for learning opportunities for people to learn more about river safety, be able to access whitewater in a more controlled environment than going in the Wenatchee River at 10,000 CFS. So, all right, well, here we are. So this is just basically a visual to look at that incorporates all of these things that we've talked about tonight. This concept shows a potential for like a backwater channel for that off-channel habitat in that low spot. And I just want to say these are all, this project idea, it's all completely scalable. There are elements that could be included or not included. It could be a focus on one thing, but not another thing. This kind of shows all the potential. So habitat improvement, better pathway that protects the riparian a little bit better for all the tubing activity and exit that happens at this beach. Tuber exit signage could be potentially even midstream here. This shows a wave feature incorporated into the existing dam feature, and Mason's going to talk a little bit more about that from a hydraulic standpoint. This shows some regrading or movement of that dam material that's below the structure to enlarge the pool there, which would also have the benefit of having a larger tail out area for this feature, which would also have the effect of having more room to get out of the river right there before that riffle picks up speed. This shows a little bit more of a riffle there rather than that deep channel that was carved by the blasting out of the dam. So I'm going to hand it over to Mason.
All right. So as Erin mentioned, we did alternatives analysis. So a range of alternatives were developed, ranging from no action through to a channel spanning recreation feature. Once we completed the alternatives analysis, which the report is on the county website along with this rendering, if you want to look at it. But upon completion of the alternatives analysis, we developed a preferred concept that provided, the most benefit to all the different objectives of the project, including habitat restoration, public safety improvement, and recreational opportunity. So this is the artist rendering of the preferred concept design that was developed. And this is, similar to that aerial view that was showed earlier with the proposed improvements. And Erin already talked about this a little bit, but all the remnant dam material would be removed as part of this project. That includes the material in the river as well as on the bank. A big part of the dam area would be replaced with vegetation and bioengineering treatments. A portion of the dam in the river would be replaced with large stone placed strategically to create a recreational feature when water flows over it. The south side of the dam, the south side of the river right, the riverbed would be regraded, boulders placed to enhance fish passage and habitat. Erin mentioned this backwater habitat, backwater channel that's upstream river left of the dam that could provide, which would provide off-channel salmonid habitat. And Randy will talk a little bit about that later. And then the new path and improved tuber takeout, including signage. And the goal would really to make it as hard as possible to accidentally miss the tuber takeout during tubing season. Don't worry, Barn Beach would remain. The remnant dam material and the existing riffle would be removed and the riffle regraded, and this pool at the beach would get a bit larger. So what would the recreational feature look like? And it will depend on flow in the river, as well as how the specific boulders are placed. In order to create the most natural project possible, as well as to help ensure the project could get permitted by regulatory agencies, we're not proposing any concrete or grout in the river. So the only thing placed in the river would be natural stone, and the wave would form similar to how waves form in natural rapids. So the following are going to be a few example photos of some of our other constructed projects, just to give you an idea of what it could look like. I forgot I had a whole well here. We'll go. I'll touch on these as we're talking. This is our project in Montrose, Colorado. There's a lot of riparian vegetation included, as well as stone bank terracing that provides river access and hangout areas along the river. There's several in-stream features that are popular with kayakers, stand-up paddleboarders, and river surfers. This is a project in Siloam Springs, Arkansas. There's 3 in-stream recreational features that are designed for low flows, and it's popular with canoeists and kayakers. Brennan's Wave in Missoula, Montana is a good example of a wave feature that changes dramatically at different water levels. In the spring during runoff, it can be a really good river surfing wave. Franklin, New Hampshire, this project phase 1 was just constructed this past winter. 2 more in-stream structures upstream are planned. The wave has been a hit with kayakers, but has also attracted the full range of river users, as you can see by the boogie boarding crew here. And prior to the project, there was a vertical concrete wall that was the riverbank separating town from the river. And that's one of the most satisfying things about building these projects, is seeing beginners and kids getting into the river and learning how to enjoy the river safely. At what flows would the wave be in? And again, like I said previously, the wave character would change at different flows. On the low end, with a good portion of the river going through the rock riffle on River Right, we would probably need at least 1,500 CFS for something decent, though it might still be enjoyable on a boogie board at lower levels. And then as the flow goes up from there, generally more water is better, until at a certain point the tailwater will raise high enough that the feature will drown out and the wave will flatten. So as part of the next phase of design, one thing that we would be doing is collecting water surface measurements at the full range of flows, as well as doing hydraulic modeling, and have more specific answers to that question. Once constructed, these projects require little to no maintenance. It's similar to any other rapid in the river, where it's just rocks on the riverbed. So that's about all I have, and I will turn it over to Randy.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so my role in this project was to help Chelan County, sort of advising them throughout the process on the habitat considerations. So considering the design, considering the project goals, and making sure that habitat, particularly endangered species in the Wenatchee River, are being considered throughout the design process for this project. So potential impacts from the project are being considered throughout the design. We have spoken, you can see on this line, we've spoken with state and federal level agencies, Fish and Wildlife, Washington Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and the National Marine Fisheries Services. We had a great conversation with those agencies regarding our concept for the design. They gave us all the hard questions on how we would consider habitat in the design. And they were satisfied to the point with the conceptual design that they could see a path forward for permitting this project in consideration of endangered species. That's not a green light by any means. That's just saying, following the proper design procedures, this is a project to be implemented. So as we would move forward here in hydraulic modeling and design, the first priority from a habitat perspective would be maintenance of existing conditions now, or not doing any harm through this project. And at this particular site, that is primarily fish passage right through the former dam site. We don't want to restrict fish movement through this site, particularly because upstream, and I think we'll see this on the next slide, is a big spawning area. So we want to make sure fish can continue to get through the site just like they do now. So whatever changes there are in hydraulics cannot decrease fish passage through this site. Next would be the upstream spawning. The level set of the feature, the riffle regrading, all that's going to have to maintain water surface elevations upstream in the flat water area and not change sediment deposition and all the conditions that currently lead to good spawning. That would need to be maintained. And then when opportunity presents itself to increase habitat availability, the quantity of habitat and the quality of existing habitat. And I think all of those things are very attainable with this project. So looking at the modeling, the hydraulic model, this will be in subsequent phases of the design, looking at fish migration, when are fish coming through in that upstream spawning area. September, October is the peak spawning for most of the fish that are using that. So we're going to be looking at water levels at those times, making sure that the conditions specifically at migratory periods are being maintained. And looking at a red is a fish spawning area, looking at those and making sure that we're not impacting those areas. So here is that image. All these dots are surveyed reds. These are where fish are spawning upstream here of the feature that we're talking about. So in the Wenatchee, in the main stem Wenatchee below Tumwater Canyon, this is by far the highest concentration of spawning in the data that I've seen. So this is very important to maintain. We're very aware of that, and it'll be carried through the entire design. So getting fish through here to access this and not changing the character of this area in terms of the quality of spawning habitat will be very important to this project. And then as you saw in that design slide, this area has that low topography where it's possible, if this were selected as a portion of the project, to create increased habitat, off-channel habitat, is what we would call that in the floodplain, which is both extremely critical to sensitive life stages of the fish that we're concerned with. Usually juvenile fish find those places to hang out in. So it's critical and it's extremely limited on the main stem, Wenatchee River. There's not a whole lot of that available to fish right now. So the opportunity to put that in would be a big benefit for this project as well. You can see most of these dots are summer Chinook beds, just if you were interested in that. Those are the primary habitat concerns. And I think that is where I hand it back.
So yeah, we're really happy to have Mason and Randy here. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions after this. And so we're hoping we can cover that range of questions with some professional input or, you know, from our perspective as well. So to wrap it up, bottom line, a project here could have a lot of different types of benefits, but it's also a very scalable project and nothing is decided at this point. So it's kind of going to be driven by how the community feels about it, how interested people are in different aspects of the project. Adding a wave feature to the project would increase the complexity, but it would also really provide a lot more potential for recreational appeal, both for whitewater enthusiasts and for the use of the pool, the Barn Beach pool. And then we think that this concept strikes a balance between all of these benefits. And since there is a lot of work already going on in terms of river recreation in this area, this is the right time to be looking at it and thinking about it. And yeah, that's what we have. We have some time for questions. I think we can go a little bit over the 8 o'clock end time here, but yeah, also here's my contact info. We want input. We were happy to hear your questions. We're not doing a formal comment period at this time because we don't have a concept that we're proposing. This is kind of the chance to talk about the process and talk about some ideas. But my email is there, and please email me with thoughts or questions, and we'll take that all into consideration as we work next steps with the city, with landowners, with agencies and folks. And there will be a public engagement night at the Fest Hall on May 2nd. So we'll plan to be there. We'll hopefully be a few steps farther along in terms of like thinking about overall river recreation strategy and having heard what folks think at this point. So I'll leave that up there. There's also the county website where all of these documents are housed, the original feasibility study, the alternatives analysis, concepts, things like that. So I'll leave that up there and we'll open it up to questions.
All right. And for questions, it's a little awkward, but I have to run around with this microphone. So please hold your question until I get to you to hand you the mic.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to ask a couple of questions online first, and then I'll start moving around the room here. So we have questions about traffic in that area, about parking and facilities and infrastructure. So questions related to that, if you can answer some of that. And then also, I think you may have already mentioned this, but maybe quickly how we chose this site over those other sites, why those sites were eliminated.
Yes. Okay, I can take that one. So I guess first back to the site, we had that prioritization matrix, and a lot of the other sites unfortunately weren't as feasible as appealing. It would have been great if this was in Kashmir. We really wish that it was at the Kashmir Riverside Park, but the river isn't right for it there. It wouldn't work. We wanted it to be there, but you know, for example, it would have been really nice if it was anywhere else other than in downtown Leavenworth. So we get that, but it really, but other sites weren't feasible. It wouldn't work at the other sites. And I don't know if we can add to that if you guys want, but I will say for the parking, the kind of seasonality of it is one thing that we hope would sort of mitigate that a little bit in it being more of a shoulder season type of attractant. So, summertime is the busiest season. That's the low flow season when it wouldn't be as much of a whitewater draw. The other thing is that parking at the East Leavenworth boat ramp could be feasible for this site. It'd be pretty easy and doable for boats, suppers to park there, paddle across the river. And then there's a path already on this side that could be, you could walk up the path and paddle back over to the East Leavenworth boat ramp. And that's a lot larger of a parking area. So do you want to say anything about the other site feasibility?
Sure. But yeah, the report online goes into detail about, each of the sites we looked at. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the river downstream of here, it's a lot, geomorphically unstable, where it's, this is a site, it's constrained and the river isn't going to move around on us. So, and that's part of the reason, most of these projects do get built at existing dams, because they're already at constricted locations and the river obviously is heavily impacted. So that's the other consideration, is that the project needs to, kind of have a net ecological uplift. And it's, it's hard to do that at a less disturbed areas of the river. Obviously everything's disturbed to a certain point in the valley, but the dam locations, it's, it's easier to create that benefit for the river.
And I'll also say too, though the whitewater component could have been a draw for a different area, it was great to look at this area a little more and realize that there are a lot of other project potential, other potential benefits to doing a project here.
I was just wondering how this would affect the current swimming hole down there, because that's kind of the safest place to bring children right now. It stays deep and calm the whole summer. So having that wave action there, is that going to affect that swimming hole and the safety that it currently has?
I'll let Mason take that one.
Can you repeat the question so we can hear it?
Yeah, so she was asking about there's the existing kind of swimming hole at Barn Beach that at low water in the summer, it's a really good place to bring kids and it's a safe place in the river. And so she just wanted to know, with building, the wave feature and what we're doing with this project, would that, affect that, and would it still be a safe place? And I think the answer is yes. That pool would still be, similar that it is today. I think when it gets used for that purpose, the water's quite low. And we would, as I mentioned, with there's that, and where Erin showed those photos of there's right now the exit of that pool is a pretty steep riffle that sounds like sometimes people get dragged down. Would be, reducing the height of that riffle a bit and moving it back. So essentially just increasing the size of that pool, but that, because it is at higher flows when the wave feature is being used, we want a nice big recovery pool there. So and obviously we are also, this is just the concept level. A lot of these more detailed questions would be worked out in, further design, but the goal would be to, keep that existing pool, though maybe extend it downstream a bit farther.
I think I might be able to just say this. So comment initially, having visited the places that you showed and other parks that have been developed, it's always a net benefit to a community, and that area needs that, upgrade. It needs a little bit of a facelift down there, given the usership. I also hope that it forces the hand of kind of the usership that's coming down the river now. We've seen a big uptick in the number of, tubes, both commercially and privately coming down the river. So it's going to kind of force that hand parking is an issue. My question is more specifically timeline to build, because I feel like people would have to be in the river at that time of year as well to build. So I feel like there might be a little bit interface with the traffic on the river.
So timeline of actual construction,
Yeah.
if it were constructed, it would likely be, well, there's an in-water work window that you have to work within for fish considerations. In this area, that in-water work window extends to September 30th. So the best time for construction would be after Labor Day and before September 30th, when recreational use is a lot lower. There may be a little bit, but it's more of the kind of weekday people getting out for paddle. So that would kind of be the ideal construction period. And it sounds like this is something that could be feasibly constructed within that time frame.
I'm gonna bounce off this comment real quick. Didn't you just say exam run of September to October? So is that end of September or is that all of September?
Can be directly in the spawning. Right about this during, right? Constructing during spawning.
The fish. Oh, yeah. So the question was, wouldn't there be spawning during that work window? That's determined by the agencies, the fisheries, WDFW, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So this would all be run through consultation with those groups to approve any in-water work windows. But my understanding is that those work windows are set for the times of the least impact to fish species. So.
Well, on that, you just stated that the peak is from September through October for that run. Am I correct, sir?
That's my understanding from the data that's presented for that basin.
So then your work window would be impacting the peak spawn of that.
Okay.
Let me get your question here on the night.
Sorry.
We're online. So yes, quick question.
The question was, how does the construction impact the peak spawning during September through October?
You said that the in-water work window ends September 30th. So yeah, there's overlap for that in-water work window into the primary spawning period for those summer Chinook, the yellow dots that we saw upstream there. That in-water work window is again set by the agencies that provide the permits to do the work, and is that period of time where the least impact is going to be had when working in fish bearing streams in Washington. There's no time that we could work in that river and not have impacts on the fish there for sure. We would not be allowed to track through spawning beds or anything like that. And when you start to bring these documents to like a construction bid process, and Mason could talk about this a lot, the scrutiny is tight on how are you going to control for sediment released into the stream? How are you going to control for where your equipment are sitting? And all eyes are on the project to make sure that there's not something happening that's going to have a major impact on spawning in that area. It's going to be minimized to as much as is possible through that permitting process.
I've got a question over here.
Just a quick question, Erin. Are those comment letters from DFW and Yakima Nation? I didn't see them online. Could you make those available? Because I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to push back with Dryden, because it seems clearly to be a much better site.
I can definitely put those letters, they're public letters. And I mean, as far as pushing back with Dryden, we've gone as far as we can go down that path, agency to agency, and politically, they told us their answer. Whether other groups can go down that path, that's open for consideration. But yes, I will put them on there.
In your conceptual designs, have you guys considered sediment supply? One of my concerns, one of the reasons Barn Beach is there is because there's a big eddy and there's limited sediment supply because of Lake Wenatchee, limited sediment supply. And I can imagine a scenario where you blow out Barn Beach during construction, and it becomes really hard to get that sediment, that sand back there, which is obviously one of the attractants to the current feature.
Yeah, great question. And So obviously we've only gone through conceptual design so far. And so it's just, kind of based on, we've built a lot of these projects, and a lot of the things we build are, can put deflectors or set things at certain elevations to try and encourage deposition from eddies and things. So, but moving forward, and we know would be retaining Barn Beach and at least what's there. Potentially there could be, depending on who you ask, there might be a little more, there could be more deposition, but moving forward, we know there's a really, really strong attach. I mean, Barn Beach is awesome. We don't want to negatively impact the beach at all. So that would be a primary goal moving forward.
Since we have our fine mayor of Leavenworth here and our county representative, I'd like to see a show of hands of people who are opposed to this proposition. Our county commissioner, just so they get a feel for the room here.
I don't hear a compelling reason for what we are really repairing and fixing here. My experience of the dam that's been here for almost 100 years now, I don't believe it's visibly ugly. I don't feel like we have a channel trapped by cement that needs repair. And this backwater area, that would be backhoed or something?
Yeah, that would be dug out.
Which, in order to maintain that, I mean, I know it floods, I walk there too, but it doesn't stay flooded very long, and you'd be having to maintain backhoeing work, seems like, to create that backwater. It's expensive, and we are in a terrible economic inflationary time. It's a bad timing for this.
Yeah, in terms of that backwater feature specifically, and as we mentioned, it's sort of a modular component. It doesn't have to be included in this project. It doesn't have to be included in the project. We could remove or add that. Once it's constructed, it should be self-maintaining. I've been part of building maybe 100 of them. And it just becomes a natural feature of the floodplain. So it would be constructed and modeled as part of this project. So set to an elevation where it's not seasonally flooding as that depression does now, but has a constant connection, surface water connection to the river. So there should be exchange through that feature at all water levels, and it's always connected, not something that needs to be seasonally dredged out or anything like that. If it looked like that was going to be the case, and then that would need to be a maintenance issue, it would probably not end up being something that would be favored as part of the project.
Responsible for maintenance.
I don't think anybody would want to take on a maintenance contract for a feature like that. So I think through our design efforts, we would intend to create something that did not require maintenance. And if it looked like if it was going to be something that needed to be maintained, it would probably be taken out of the design. That would be
because in the feasibility report, it mentions that pool habitat features would have to be maintained. That's why I'm asking this question.
Interesting.
And
I don't know exactly what that maintenance is pointing towards.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
that needs to be figured. Also, the issue is, I believe, that the Whitewater Park would bring in even more river users into an already overcrowded river. And will the city be responsible for building a new restroom, picking up trash, and accommodating more parking? How far out are the impacts going to be realized, and what role will the city have in maintaining this area here?
As you pointed out, there's already a lot of river recreation happening. There's already a lot of, sorry, I keep thinking this is a microphone. There's already a lot of river recreation happening, and that is exponentially increasing. So So there's an impetus to address that recreation already, and that's what that river recreation management strategy is aimed at. So this would just be an element of that overall river recreation management strategy. So yeah, I mean, the exit, the tuber exit, the parking, that's on city land. So that, the city is interested in looking down that road and into the future of how do we manage this recreation.
I'm just gonna add to the uses though. It'll attract people because of this feature. It's a concern, and without pre-planning and determining the full impact, the city's gonna get stuck with a lot more work and possibly no more beach. No fewer deaths. Yeah, I was gonna help the guests.
I have another question. Erin, were you done?
Sure.
Yeah, the question, I have a two-part question. One is, I know the Chelan County, Erin, you're from the county, right? You guys are you're making a presentation. First question I have is, who initially proposed exploring this? Was it a partner? Was it an individual? Was it one entity? Was it a partnership of entities? And then the second question is, how much money have we spent so far doing the evaluations of this? And you could split that into, you don't have to answer this now, but you could split it into marginal costs, right? Additional costs being spent, like consultants, et cetera, or sunk costs being staff from the county and other entities. And then thirdly, how much money do we anticipate spending for the total project from beginning to the end?
So the first part, who proposed this, there was a huge amount of community outreach during our county comprehensive plan recreation element update 6 years ago. So this came from the community, generally from the Whitewater recreation community, who mobilized and provided hundreds of comments during our outreach effort. And that were specifically aimed at this concept. So that was the genesis of the idea. It was through a community outreach effort. What do people want to see? That's what the county heard that people wanted to see. And it was during that planning process. So that's what unlocked the funds that are basically dedicated towards pursuing the things that come out of the county comprehensive plan. In terms of funding spent, I don't know. That's something we need to, I'm asking my supervisor there.
Yeah, I think so Mike Depute, I'm the director of the Chelan County Natural Resources Department. First of all, thank you all for your endurance to stick around this long. I think we've allocated about $80,000 for this phase of the feasibility study. We haven't spent all of that money yet. I don't know how to answer the second part of your question about like how much more would we spend or how much it would cost. I mean, I think a lot of it, frankly, is driven by what kind of feedback we get, what kind of additional analysis is required. So, but I would say so far we've allocated about $80,000 for the project. 80,000? Yes, 80.
Yeah, I think it really depends on what level what the project becomes. With any, proposed changes to the structure, there would be a lot of hydraulic analysis done to answer those fish questions and answer the impacts on Barn Beach questions, things like that. So there would be a significant, a cost associated with making sure that it would actually achieve the goals, the things that we want to see, but we can't put a number to that right now.
So with building something in the river and creating it to move, you're going to cause it to back up. What is the impacts above it going to cause? What are the impacts as it's coming through and below? And the other question that nobody's answered, other than just, well, we'll just leave it on the city, is parking. You can't get parking now. You can't even get around Leavenworth. You can't get around during the winter. You can't get around it anywhere. I'm 39 years old. I've lived here my whole life. And you can't, I mean, when I was a kid, you could get around, you can't get around it now. So we're building something essentially and just saying, well, we'll just toss the corner and see where it lands. We got to have some sort of planning, as the missus said, to it. And instead of just laying it on the city and saying, well, that's the city's problem. Do they know that you're just throwing it on their desk? Are they part of it? I mean, obviously they are, but do you know if you're just going to hit them with it? But the biggest thing is I've worked a lot on the rivers. When you impact a river, what's going to go on the other side, right? On all your thing that I just seen it all on one side. As you push it over there, it erodes that side. What's it going to impact over there?
All right, well, I'll talk to the river side of your question, like the in-stream stuff. So, and as Randy mentioned, we would do, obviously, there's a lot of design, that would need to happen and everything, but the goal would be to not impact upstream water levels at all for a lot of reasons, with the upstream spawning, and we've done a ton of these projects, and we can, it's a matter of math to do that, to maintain the existing conditions. And same with downstream, there's already the amount of hydraulic drop that's there across from the upstream pool down to that downstream of the riffle, and that downstream water surface elevation wouldn't change because we're not affecting anything downstream of that. So it's really limited to within the project area, would be, the flow of water would change, to a certain extent. The amount of hydraulic drop would stay the same. So there wouldn't be impacts, beyond the project area upstream or downstream. And, and then obviously through design, we would want to make sure that Barn Beach is maintained or enhanced. So, and then, obviously the parking question is a really big one, and I'm not a parking expert, more of a water engineer. But I've seen just on a lot of our projects, most of them are located in downtown areas, and which is one of the great things about that is like one of the primary, most big users of these projects are kids who, end up walking or biking over, or, they don't have a car, so they have to carpool with their mom with a ton of their friends. So.
Thanks. Yeah. And the other part of that is the seasonality that we talked about. There wouldn't be a huge overlap with the busiest summer use season, which is the low flow base season. This would be probably more interesting to people during the spring and fall shoulder seasons. So there's a kind of answer to that is that ideally the use would be spread out more over the seasons instead of being concentrated at certain times, like a lot of the busyness is right now in town.
So we got time for maybe one more question here, and then we're going to take a couple from online, and then we're going to let the staff go home. So,
Well,
okay, go ahead.
your feasibility study says that the Wenatchee River has some of the best whitewater in the Northwest. And I know that one option is to just do habitat improvement and not do the whitewater feature. I think that maybe putting a whitewater feature at Barn Beach with county money might be equivalent to building a climbing wall in Icicle Canyon.
Erin already said part of what I was going to say is I encourage the community, including the elected people here who got asked the question, who's in favor? It's really a two-part question. One is the habitat restoration. The other one is the recreation. So I just wanted to bring that up. And I'd like to close with some input from the Yakima Nation. I feel like Indigenous people, I'm not one, but I work with many, and I feel like sometimes they don't get heard. And someone asked what they think about it, and they have sent a formal letter. They've commented on every place that was being considered. They're not in favor of any of them. And in general, they say their primary concerns include potentially increasing an already significant amount of recreational river use throughout the Wenatchee Basin that impacts the fish and the habitat and the river itself. So I just want them to be heard too.
Absolutely.
All right. Couple of online questions. Who are the anticipated users of this? Are they mostly locals or mostly out of town folks? Who do you expect that's going to be using this?
It would most likely be both local and visitors alike. I think that's part of the appeal of this project, is that it would actually be a benefit to local people, unlike a lot of other things that happen in Leavenworth that seem pretty one-sided. There are a lot of people who love to recreate in the rivers here and would appreciate opportunities to be able to do that more parts of the year. But then, there would likely be visitors who come to recreate in the Wenatchee and would visit this site and may come during those shoulder seasons when it's pretty, quiet in terms of tourism, and because there's not much of a draw in other ways, it could kind of be more of a draw during those quiet times.
And our last, or did you want to answer more?
Yeah, well, I would just say like one thing, because it is, the Wenatchee has amazing, whitewater, especially at the peak of runoff, but it is, a lot of it's quite advanced. So it's just, I think one thing some of these downtown, projects can give is really geared towards beginners and kids who aren't able to travel, in a car or go a long ways, and something that's, usable and safe at lower water levels. So.
All right. Last question I have online. Where will the users of the park exit below the feature? Will they exit through Barn Beach? The question is, how is this going to affect other users in this area if people are moving in and out of it?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah. How will users of this feature move in and out, exit and enter it with other people who are using that space as well?
Well, so they can be used in a number of different ways. It can be people who are putting it, kind of paddling through. You're on the river. You could play in this area, paddle through, and take out, as far downstream as you want. There are people. So that's one thing. If, parking gets really bad in your kayak and you want to use it, you could, set a shuttle and start higher, put in further upstream and go down. Or it can be, really when you're, or sometimes it's like park and play where you just want to use this one feature, and then it would be, or bike to the wave or park wherever you can, and then you can paddle down and up. So as far as, so there's a lot of flexibility in, if you're a paddler, where you put in or take out there.
All right. One last thing. I just want to point out that for more questions, comments, we have contact information up here. So please use the contact information. And we're going to end that for tonight. I know there are lots more questions. So
can I just say one more?
Yeah, go ahead, Erin.
I just want to say, I think we made it clear there's lots of options here and a lot of scalability and things you can do some things and not other things. So a wave feature is not a critical part of this project. There's still a lot of reasons to look at a project at Barn Beach, and the high amount of river recreation that a lot of you pointed out that will likely be increasing in the future is reason enough to look at this site and look at long-term viability and infrastructure and things like that. And then I think the safety factor is another compelling reason to be looking at this site. But that being said, there's nothing decided. There's no, plans going forward to construction at this point. These are all ideas. And I know obviously a lot of people are not in favor. A lot of people are in favor. So we'll just kind of continue to feel it out and see what the next steps are.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Jensen. Have a good night.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Great job.